Although the godfather of cemetery knockouts, Mirko Cro Cop, has long retired, he made sure to pass the torch to a new generation fighter from Croatia who is just as deadly.
The walking trouble is now the retreating trouble.
Coming forward though, marching in, more precision here, power punches, volume here. Oh, and look at this, De Castro goes down, that's it, he stepped in, it's a first round win.
One of the most dangerous heavyweights on the planet, Ante Delija, has finally arrived in the UFC, and he's coming for everyone's head, including reigning champion Tom Aspinall. For over a decade, Delija has been handing out concussions, racking up 10 brutal first-round knockouts and 6 slick submissions. This well-rounded arsenal helped him capture the PFL heavyweight world title and gave him the reputation of a boogeyman your favorite fighter hopes to avoid. With nothing left to prove outside the UFC, the heavy-hitting Croatian now has his sights set on UFC gold, making this the perfect time to revisit his career filled with bloodthirsty highlights and vicious knockouts. Ante Delija was born on August 7, 1990 in Dubrovnik, Croatia. He began training at the Dubrovnik Club Gladiator, but a pivotal moment in his development came when he joined the Cro Cop team and trained under the legendary Mirko Filipovic. Under Mirko's guidance, he learned how to channel his raw strength and power into effective performances inside the cage. Before long, he had transformed into a well-rounded heavyweight monster, capable of knocking opponents out on the feet or submitting them with ease on the ground. His MMA journey started on January 22, 2011, against Sasha Lazic. Ante dived with the submarine and brought the enemy to deep waters. There, he unleashed punishment from the top and hurried the ambulance, but not for himself. It was the kind of debut that immediately showed he wasn't there to just participate. He was there to dominate. 3 months later, he went to neighboring Bosnia to face Ernie Stramonja. The script did not differ much from the previous encounter, as Delija muscled the opponent down from the floor and immediately established a dominant position. Dropping ground-and-pound bombs from the top was brutal enough, but once he mistook Ernie's head with a soccer ball, it was GG, well played. The blueprint was clear: drag them down, smash them, and leave no doubt who the alpha was. The hard-hitting Croatian wanted to finish 2011 with a bang, so in December, he accepted another fight to improve his record further. And all it took to close the show was a nuclear-fused right hand that sent the adversary on a hitchhike through the galaxy. The crowd barely had time to blink before the lights were out, cementing Delija as a heavyweight on the rise. Delija continued the momentum in the following year, winning 2 fights by submission, before he was matched against the most famous name up to that point, Rico Rodriguez, a former UFC champion and a battle-tested vet with almost 70 fights under his belt. The veteran instantly felt the difference in speed of thought and action, and he looked like he was trying to outlast a hurricane with an umbrella. Delija treated the foe like a heavy bag with a face, who was surviving the onslaught with nothing but instinct and stubbornness. In a one-sided pounding where Ante was the blacksmith, the referee had no headache deciding who was the winner. Rico's toughness earned him the distance, but his body language told the real story. While Rico weathered the storm to hear the final bell, Delija's next opponent, Mikhail Laprakis, was not as lucky. Ante wasted no time and muscled the enemy down to the mat. He took full control and never gave the wheel back, closing the show early in the first. It was a textbook showcase of his evolving ground dominance, and it reminded everyone that Ante's Plan A usually didn't need a Plan B. On May 24, 2013, the hard-hitting Croatian was scheduled to face Gazim Selmani, an undefeated prospect known as the Albanian Psycho. He didn't waste time with appetizers and went straight to the main course. The mat became his domain and he ruled it like a tyrant. The Albanian challenger was backed into a corner with hope as his only shield. As the grueling torture went on, Delija turned his opponent into a training dummy, hitting at will, so the referee was forced to jump in and wave the fight off. Over the next 12 months, the Croatian fighter tasted the bitterness of defeat for the first time and took it as a learning experience. It was a reminder that every warrior bleeds, but only a few return sharper. On July 3, 2014, he made the necessary adjustments and returned stronger than ever to lock horns with Valentin Overeem, who is the older brother of the MMA superstar Alistair Overeem. This time, Ante was fighting a different kind of animal, as Valentin had tons of experience since he's been fighting since 1996. During his journey, he battled the best the sport had to offer and holds notable victories over the likes of Renato Sobral, Randy Couture, and Ray Sefo. Moments into the fight, Delija gave the veteran a free ride with the infamous Croatian Airlines. Then he dropped more grenades than the Allied forces in the Battle of Normandy, so the referee had to intervene. Not only did Delija take his soul, but he sent him straight to retirement. The next antagonist who got in the way was Greek Arkantis Taxiarchis. After a miss with a high kick, the Croatian powerhouse realized that he was no longer the uncontested leader of the wrestling hierarchy. The Greek threatened with submissions, but Delija was too experienced to be subdued with any of it. Once he escaped the danger zone, Ante invested in brutal soccer kicks to the head, which were allowed in this organization. Taking that into consideration, he made the north-south choke tap feel like a mercy request. After stacking up 14 victories, the hard-hitting Croatian earned the chance to challenge for the M1 Global Heavyweight crown, which at the time belonged to Marcin Tybura, a future UFC contender holding a 12-1 record. Ante opened the fight by launching his ballistic missiles, making it clear he came prepared for a firefight. And just when it looked like he was set to give Tybura a long and punishing night, disaster struck. Ante broke his leg while throwing a low kick, leaving him unable to continue. The injury was gruesome and kept the Croatian prospect sidelined for nearly 3 years. But on May 6, 2018, he finally returned, earning a unanimous decision win over Ricardo Prasel and reminding everyone that the old Ante was back in business. By then, his reputation had crossed the Atlantic, and the PFL came calling with an offer he simply couldn't refuse. Delija made his promotional debut on June 6, 2019 against Karl Semunotafa, a KO artist and former FFC title challenger. He turned the cage into a wrestling mat and his opponent into a crash dummy. Karl tried to shake him off, but Ante stuck tighter than Taxstat. In the end, Ante outmuscled him for a decisive victory, and even Karl knew who the main character in this story was. The next heavyweight standing in his way was Ole Thompson, a UFC veteran with over 30 battles inside the cage. The dynamic duo immediately set the tone for the confrontation. The Croatian charged forward and slammed his opponent like overdue paperwork on a boss's desk. Like a python coiling around its prey, his grappling left no escape. The Englishman briefly returned to his feet, only for Ante to serve him an extra dose of gravity shock treatment. He hoped for hypoxia, but it almost seemed like the foe had an oxygen cylinder hidden somewhere. In the second round, the Croatian picked up right where he left off in the first, turning the fight into a slow, violent funeral. Ante Delija was sidelined for over a year in 2020, and 2021 turned out to be a true roller coaster in his career. He earned a unanimous decision victory over Denis Goltsov in the 2021 PFL Heavyweight Tournament semifinal, but came up short in the final against Bruno Capelozza. That same year, he turned into a pit bull on the ground and tore Chandler Cole apart with heavy shots. On April 28, 2022, he was matched against Mateusz Scheffel, who entered with a 17-8 record. Without hesitation, Ante executed a DC-style single-leg takedown to drag the fight into his realm. The Brazilian returned to his feet only to be intercepted by rockets. As the second round unfolded, Scheffel threw a middle kick, and Delija responded with an atomic right hand that ended the night in devastating fashion. On August 13th of that same year, the heavy-handed Croatian entered the 2022 PFL Heavyweight Tournament, where the semifinals set him against Renan Ferreira, a dangerous slugger with one-punch KO power. Cornered by the legendary Mirko Cro Cop, Delija leaned on his trademark strength, muscling the big Brazilian to the canvas. Ferreira hit the mat and met a dead end as Ante unleashed such brutal ground and pound that the referee had to intervene to spare the Brazilian from a trip to the emergency room. In the tournament final, Delija met Mateusz Scheffel once again. Since he had already lost to the Croatian earlier that year, this was Scheffel's shot at redemption. From the outset, both men wrote their intentions in capital letters. Then Ante steered his rival into an ambush and pulled the trigger, unleashing machine gun-like fire. The agonized Mateusz Scheffel sank like the Titanic, splitting in half. Ante Delija became the 2022 PFL Heavyweight Champion and earned the $1 million prize in the process. The following year, he picked up another dominant unanimous decision victory against Maurice Green, but lost a violent gunfight against Valentin Moldavsky, a student of the legendary Fedor Emelianenko. By then, it hardly mattered. Ante had bigger goals in sight, joining the most elite MMA organization in the world, the UFC. Before that chapter, he took on a side quest in Slovenia at the local FNC promotion, where he was set to face Yorgan De Castro, one of the few fighters to defeat former UFC champion Junior Dos Santos. The opponent came in swinging, aiming for decapitation, but Ante quickly set the rhythm with sharp combinations and clocked both of them out. By this point, the UFC matchmakers couldn't ignore him any longer, and they decided it was time to welcome Ante Delija into their ranks. Ante Delija wrestles like a bear, giving his opponents no room to breathe. For those lucky enough to survive the initial onslaught, he always has a plan B tucked away, unleashing heavy boxing combinations that can shut their lights out in an instant. He's now set to make his UFC debut against an old foe, Marcin Tybura. Should he overcome his Polish counterpart, Delija could be catapulted straight into the title conversation. But the real question remains, does he have what it takes to dethrone the UFC champion, Tom Aspinall? If you enjoyed the video, front kick that like button, subscribe to the channel, and join the Dialed In MMA Club today.